Hey folks, ET here coming at you with the midweek mashup. Middle of the week, we'll look at what the data has said so far, how it's performed, and tonight we'll be checking SPY, QQQ, and Tesla. So let's go ahead and dig into the SPY options dashboard first, see where we're at, see where the deltas are at, where some of our price distributions are, and kind of just take a look from there. So obviously there's a little bit of call heaviness going into 616 a little bit there, but you know, indices can be used as hedging, so it really depends. Calls and puts can be hedging, so which is kind of crazy to see. Taking a look at our deltas, they had shrunk. Our dealer Greeks had shrunk a little bit, okay, and these deltas are back up again. And today we had a nice downturn. Obviously, we get a fairly decent return here if we see these deltas pushing up. Remember, it's not always an exact science. You need to be patient, and then what I like to do is short on green days, not reds. So as you can see, our deltas continue to build, and we finally got a very nice downtrend, about $8, $10 since last week. Looking at our price distribution going into tomorrow, kind of a mixed bag, a little bit mixed. Maybe a round trip day we'll see. Those are the days I like to fade the first move, obviously. Going into Friday, it's slightly bullish, but if you look at all these and start putting them together, it looks like another little bit of potential chop. Getting into next week, price distros get a little bit more positive. We have some more days pushing, and then a week from tomorrow, or from today, 5 sessions from today, not looking so great. So that is quite a bit more bearish, a little bit more downside. If we are checking our dealer OI here for today, we were sitting on a bearish position, and guess what? Market went down a little bit today. We finally hit that 410, which we'll look at here in a second. We're slightly bullish on dealer OI. Remember, red is bullish, green is bearish, so we're slightly bullish here going into Thursday's session, and then Friday's session we're slightly bearish again. This would be Tuesday, obviously, because since Monday's the market's closed. And then so just a little bit of maybe a downtrend if you're looking at this after the pop we've got after hours due to NVDA. And then we go into some bullish positions for about a week, which is interesting to see. And then if we get into our 616, that is quite bearish. Remember, these change frequently. These change throughout the day, so they will change. They will make things look a little different as we go. And so always check them daily to see if the swings that you are in are still supported by some of these positions. All right, let's check our expiry filter here, which it should be already set for this week, but we'll go ahead and give it a quick check. 526. Look at that. We're starting to see a little bit of a difference now. We were, just for the week, if we were just looking at the week ahead total, we were sitting at 410 as our biggest gamma level. Now 415 is currently our biggest pull, which is pretty interesting to see. We did get this 410 today. If we refreshed and just took a look at what it looks like before we change our expiry, we can see that 410 is where we hit today. And I think if we're looking at levels, we're getting close. We're getting close to this next dark pool where we've not quite seen that 415 quite yet. And that doesn't necessarily mean we have to. It just means, you know, there's a little bit of push away here at 412.5, where if you look, 412.9 point there where we are is where we kind of came down a little bit during the post session. And so then taking a look at these GEX levels. Now this is interesting, the GEX and VEX profile. I do check this every day, and let's go ahead and go back and make sure we switch to the 525 for tomorrow, and we will just see what it all looks like, see if anything changes. Not really that much. Here's the thing that interests me. Price really isn't supported that much lower or higher, right around that 416, 415 range, 417.8, which is pretty interesting to see. This tool is something that I just use to check to see where price might go. And sometimes during the day when it updates, I will look to think on a big downtrend. If a level is just a little bit pushed, if let's say our downtrend today was 416, I might say, oh my goodness, right around here it might be a spot that I look long if MNF and ODTE GEX line up. So just taking a quick look, That's what we're looking at for SPY. We'll go ahead and take a look at its levels really quick. It is quite muddy, as I said earlier. In the, let me delete this positive GEX level portion here. We do not need that. As I said earlier in the pre-market prep video, we're looking at a lot of congestion on the way up. There is a decent ghost zone between 415 and let's just say 418 roughly, right around there. So there is some room for more up if the market decides to continue upwards. It seems to shake off quite an awful lot of bad news, even though today, if we take a look, we finally got that 410 range that we were looking for. So that's pretty interesting to see that we finally got that. We couldn't break hard enough to get down to our 409, and obviously breaking 409 is very dangerous. That sends us down to that 405 range. That is one of our current largest ghost zones. So just looking, if we go through and take a look real quick, let's just look at the price distributions and the GEX going out. We do have a little bit of a shot to go further up over the next few days. And if we're just checking our price distros, let's go back to tomorrow. It does look a little bit choppy and a little bit mid-range, so I would not be shocked to see us range a little bit in between this 414 and this 410, unless there is a catalyst that brings us up. And if we're looking at catalysts for Thursday, we do have GDP, jobless claims, 2 Fed speakers, and home sales. So that is quite a bit of information the market will have to digest as well. All right, so that is the look at SPY. We are going to go ahead and move to QQQ now. So let's go ahead and pull it up and let's grab its levels. I've got them all ready to go for us, so that way you don't have to waste time watching me mess around. So let's grab them. Let's see what QQQ looks like. We'll check all of its data as well, and then we'll take a look at Tesla, which was previously pretty bullish, even during the downtrend. So as you can see, NVDA is pretty heavy in QQQ, so there is a massive run up after hours. Right, you saw we closed at 331, and we are ramping up big time, which is pretty crazy to see. To be honest, that is one heck of a run, a $4 run in after hours session. So does it hold? We don't know yet, but 337 is a pretty big level to watch. All right, so if it can get up there, 337, obviously our ODTE GEX is going to give us that information. Now we had previously, I'd like to point out, we had previously had a QQQ level very high up, excuse me, and that level is now gone. There was one at 350, that gamma level, and I was a little concerned the market might have a crazy blow-off day on NVIDIA earnings, but it looks like for now the top of the gamma levels is 337. I want to point out, I pay attention to these tops for one really important reason, and the bottoms as well. If we're reaching a portion where there's no more money being spent and we don't see higher levels going on, and we might see it on its options chart here in a few minutes. We'll check. We'll see if there's some others that are popping up further out. But for now, just looking at the daily 337, when I'm looking at these, what I'm looking for is more things hitting their local top where gamma is sitting. AMD would be a good example. AMD has had gamma sitting at 120 for about a week and a half now. Some popped up this weekend and had me absolutely shocked that it had some gamma at 120. And if you take a look at its after hours session, it hit 120 on the dot and then rejected from that level. So when I'm looking at these things, I'm looking for some price comparisons, some deltas that match, some price distributions, and what I'm trying to find is there a top forming in more than one thing so I can think about following the SPY deltas to swing short a little bit longer, if that makes sense. So if we get this here, if we get this 337 tapped and we somehow reject, that would give me more confidence in short swings on QQQ depending on the data that we're looking at, which let's go ahead and take a look. There are some heavy calls going out to that 616 as well. Look at that 335. I'd be interested to see if we tap that 337, how many of these disappear. So we'll see there. Its algo flow, its net flow is very strong, but I also like to point out I don't follow net flows for indices ever. There were an awful lot of puts sold today on it, which is interesting because it's way up. It's almost as if, hey, someone knew, as someone always does. Now, its deltas are also building back up. Okay, and it's not quite the same win percentage as SPY, but it is still pretty good. And look at this. For tomorrow, its price distribution shows pretty high. That is interesting to see, okay? So it shows a pretty bullish potential going into Thursday. And then Friday, a little bit more bullishness, okay, and then getting into Tuesday, we still have some more. So maybe if price distributions follow over the next few days, excuse me, if price distributions actually are followed the next few days, if these are predicting properly, then maybe some more gamma will appear past 337. We will see, but we'll see if there's any above as we scroll down. So into the day, we were sitting in a pretty bearish position, and guess what happened? We had a nice downtrend day. I'd like to add that I had 335 puts that I bought for quite far out, and I sold them when we hit 334, and so I paper handed them absolutely terribly. I had a month left on them, and we hit, what, 330 today? So I had plenty of time to make more money, and guess what? I did not. I just sold them too early. So if anybody wants to know, not everybody is perfect, and we can make decisions sometimes that even though I was in profit, I could have done better. So going back to look, so we have the next few days a little bit bearish for Thursday and for Friday, and then some bull momentum coming in for next week a little bit. So we will see if any more gamma pops up, but we will take a look. We do have some further up. There's that 350 I was talking about. Let's go ahead and just look at what this week says and see if just going for Friday shows us anything different. It really does shows us a pretty strong pull at 340, honestly, which is past that 337 we were talking about, which is also a pull towards it. So interesting to see if it can actually top out and hit that. There's 345, and if we were trailing off here, that would probably be our 350. The interesting thing that I keep looking at here is there is price support around 330 and 339, and so that does potentially show perhaps a move past this 337. I guess we could go back if we wanted to. We could pull the monthly here and see if it gives us some more local tops to look at, and that would give us a bigger picture drawn out on the chart. There you go. If we draw that, now we can see those larger levels popping up on there. Sometimes you do need to go out further. If you're trying to look at a chart and plan for a further out thing, you might need to go out to the monthly to see. Some have nothing pop up. There you go. So we do have some draws. Look at that all the way up, potentially if the market does decide to continue to run, which is very interesting to see. Okay, so that is QQQ. Let's go ahead and take a look at Tesla really quick. See what it looks like. Just give it a check. We'll grab its Greek levels. Oh, I did that earlier, and there isn't anything past this, which is interesting to see. So when we're pulling up Tesla, pretty interesting. Right now, there is no gamma above this 187.50, which is very interesting to see. Okay, it does have bullish Momo, but right now, just looking at its levels, 180-ish around there it seems like a decent buy spot and a sell spot into 188 roughly, unless more gamma does appear. Taking a look at its options dashboard, though, obviously there are still a lot of calls on the table. Some 190, which does match up to that 188, 189. Remember, these levels aren't exactly exact. You can see price and candles wick above and wick below, and then work themselves back up towards them. And if it decides to go on a pretty big uptrend, I'd not be shocked to see more. So we'll check its actual gamma chart down here when we take a look to see if there's anything that we're missing. Right? It had a pretty negative net flow today, but it did have everything had a nice drawdown. Quite a few puts were bought. Let's see how its deltas stack up if they're still going. So they were very, very bullish. Remember, red down for Tesla. You make sure you have to back test to make sure that they match up. Red down for Tesla does usually mean an uptrend, and it's been fairly accurate over time. It has done quite well, and so this is very good. Tesla is one of the best ones to play with deltas. They seem to work quite well. These are shrinking a little bit, so as they get further up towards that, maybe not quite as bullish, so watch them every day to see if they change like SPYs did big time. All right, so going into Friday, this is actually a very bullish position. It doesn't necessarily match the price distros for tomorrow. Let's see if the price distros match for Friday. This just kind of a mixed and mid, maybe a run around chop day or a round trip day where we see a lot of volatility. One thing I'd like to point out is when I'm making a swing play, I really do, and it's not often you find it, but when you do, those are the ones that I go in a little heavier. When I'm looking for a swing play, I'm looking for price distros to match. I'm looking for dealer Greeks to match, and I'm also looking for some of the dealer OI to match and give me more of a potential push towards the direction I am looking. So it looks for now we're still in a bullish state for dealer OI going for Tesla, which means that we could go ahead and take a run up to that 188 at some point. We've seen Tesla move so quickly. I mean, if you look today, just today, we got from 187 or 178.24 roughly all the way up to 184. That is a $6 move. So just playing it properly and waiting for levels is a really great way to make some decent money on Tesla, even if you're just scalping. So going back into it, if we're taking a look, we have a little bit or a lot bit of bullish push finishing out this week, and then going into next week, it's a little bit more bearish. So if we're just looking into, let's just go out 5 days to see if there's any bearish positioning. Not necessarily. They all look a little bit mixed. So this is something that I might not swing. Now let's go a little further out. Further out about 10 days. Well, that's roughly going into this week here, and that's probably not going to be a short swing for me unless these dealer Greeks change and we see these change to be into a bearish position. So that's Tesla for us. Let's go ahead and scroll down, check its GEX. 185 is a pretty good spot, right? This 177.5 is a repel, and as you can see, we got to 178 roughly today. So it's always interesting to see these. Interesting to see these repel levels, and when price gets close to them, what happens? And when price got a little bit close to this 177, let's just call it 178, it started to push upwards again today, which is always interesting to see how these negative or how these positive levels repel. Pardon me, not negative. Our negatives pull, our positives repel. So if it manages to get to 205 and this is still holding, guess what? This might be an okay short if there are some price distributions and some dealer OI that line up. Its GEX and VEX profile, pretty interesting. Price is just about supported a little bit around here, right? And it just kind of thins out as we get up into that 194.6 range, which obviously 194 is above our current highest gamma. So maybe that is where it tuckers out a little bit if it gets a nice green run. It is Tesla, so sometimes it does go absolutely bonkers and just goes nuts for the day. Those are the 3 tickers that we are covering for today. Let's just go ahead and do a rundown real quick of what we saw today in our action. And what we saw was, and this, I thought this was a little crazy, even though these sold off at the end of the day. Calls were over puts all day, which makes perfect sense because we had that end of day run, and we're currently having an aftermarket run on some things. So in AH session, some things are going, but I thought it was interesting to see all these puts climb up at the end of the day, right? They weren't too crazy, but I thought it was a little nuts to see the puts keep climbing while price was going up right there at the end of the day. Let's go ahead and open up our flow line real quick, and we'll check to see how everything panned out there, kind of on a bigger scale of things, see what that looks like. Calls got hit real hard though, as you can see, and puts did come down, but there was that rise for a little bit, especially on the unfiltered look. All right, so scrolling through everything else, we really topped out. This was interesting to see our strikes going through. We saw a 413 pull for a very brief moment on our buy time. It started to come down a little bit. 412 came down a little bit, and then all of a sudden price started to go up quite a bit during the end of the day. So if we'll just pull that chart back up, we did see a pull on 413 temporarily, and we saw that run up just to about 413, just below this dark pool level near the end of the day, which was interesting to see for sure. We did finish with this little bit of a red DEX, which I find just a little bit interesting as we are going into. Let me refresh that to make sure. Yep, just I find interesting going into what we are currently looking at as a run up. And our flow map, which we'll cover all this in the morning as well. Flow map was put heavy to end the day, but I don't pay attention to these till about an hour and a half in. Anyhow, just as we're going. So, and then one thing that I've been talking about, and this is very subjective, very subjective, just to point out, when I'm seeing these call side heavy DMDs kind of build up over time, instead of expecting an end of day run, what I've been looking for is a controlled sell off if we're over here, or controlled buying if we're over on the red side where they have to buy to remain neutral. So here they have to sell to remain neutral if we're on the green side on the right, and red is we have to buy to remain neutral. So what we've seen so far this week is actually a little bit of controlled selling as the week has gone on, which is what I had predicted, I believe, in my Friday night video. That is what I am looking at for today. That is all I've got to cover. I will see you Friday night for our weekly wrap up of how everything went and where we ended up. Everybody have a good night.